So this meeting will be recorded, and we are now in a partnership with ScholarWorks, which is part of the University of Arkansas. So they'll be organizing and archiving the slides, the YouTube videos, and the fast facts together in a separate, in addition to our website, in a separate location, so it will make it easier. And they will actually transcribe the videos and the Zoom calls once they're posted to YouTube so that people can see them in closed caption. Last week we mentioned that we were going to do an assessment survey. The IRB process hasn't been approved yet, but we hope to have that approved by next week. And we are working with IT to also get a listserv so that as new communication comes, we can send it to everybody who's interested. So due to time, I'll go ahead and get started. Let me share. And don't forget, Angela will be monitoring the chat, so you can ask questions that way. So let's see, Angela, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So today we're going to talk about nutrition basics. I also put the website for DFEND here, and these slides will be posted on the DFEND website as well as in ScholarWorks next week. So we have 5 objectives today: understanding what are the 6 classes of nutrients, how to calculate the calories in the foods we eat, and the % of calories. And Angela's designed a really nice fast fact on this, so we won't go over it in this talk. Understand calorie and macronutrient intake levels that we need, strategies for healthy eating and healthy eating on a budget, and understanding portion size. So we talked a little bit about some of these in DFEND 1.0, and we'll go into it again because I think it's important. So this is just showing you what a food system is related to diet and nutrition, because as we're in the middle of this COVID-19 pandemic, we are seeing weaknesses in our food system and supply chain. So we can see that our food environments are changing. So the types of food that are available and the access to food. We're seeing our economics impacted and affordability of food. We're seeing different ways foods are promoted, and there's a lot of shift to focus on food quality and food safety. COVID-19 is impacting our behaviors, so it's impacting what foods we're choosing and buying and preparing. It's impacting the quality and the diversity and the safety of our diet, and all of this impacts our nutrition and health outcomes. So I want to frame this in terms of COVID-19 and social distancing, because as we learn more, we're learning that COVID-19 does impact people with nutrition disorders or chronic health conditions related to nutrition more than others. So this is just data from 2017, and it's self-reported obesity data among US adults by state. So you can see with Arkansas, we're one of those maroon states that has more than a 35% obesity rate. And this is important because this is actually a global chart, but these are the total annual numbers of death by risk factor across all ages and sexes. And anything you see here with a yellow star, that's a cause of death related to nutrition or a nutrition disorder. And you can see that I have low physical activity as a blue star because that's also impacted, can impact nutritional status. So this paper actually recently came out in May. And this was a groundbreaking paper in terms of COVID-19 because it established obesity as a risk factor for developing COVID-19 and the severity of our COVID-19 symptoms. And this seems to be the primary risk factor for younger patients. And this is relevant because in the US, the prevalence of obesity in adults is around 40 to 42% compared to about 6% in China or like 20% in Italy. And younger patients are less likely to have any of the major comorbidities like hypertension, diabetes, heart disease. So we know that in this population, obesity is a primary factor impacting COVID-19 for them. So this graph here on your right, it was part of this paper, and it shows this was from patients within New York City, showing that age in years versus BMI, so our body mass index, which is our weight in kilograms over height in meters squared. So I think originally when we started hearing about COVID, we were really concerned, and we still should be concerned about people over the age of 60, but it looks like these blue are male and the red are female. Causes of death related to obesity is really prevalent in this younger population. So you can see the higher BMI, the higher of the severity of COVID-19 outcomes. So they also know now that people of any age with the following conditions are at increased risk for severe illness from COVID-19. So chronic kidney disease, COPD, so chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, obesity, heart conditions, and type 2 diabetes. I've highlighted the ones that are with the yellow star that are nutrition or obesity related disease, but we also know that it impacts people who are immunocompromised and people with sickle cell disease. So that sort of sets the background for why we think DEFEND 2.0 and teaching ourselves more about nutrition and making healthy choices is important as COVID-19 cases continue to grow and spread. So just to go into, the background of nutrition. So it was recognized in 400 BC that diet is an important part of health. And it was said by Hippocrates that our food should be our medicine and our medicine should be our food. But it's really only in the last 100 years that people have been researching nutrition and understanding that carbohydrates, fats, and proteins are all needed for normal growth. And in fact, the first vitamin was only discovered in the early 1900s. And in 1928 is when the first American Institute of Nutrition was formed, and nutrition was officially recognized as a field of study. So we're a relatively new scientific field. So what is nutrition? Nutrition is the act or process of nourishing or being nourished, and it's how we take in and use the food we eat. So nutrition also has a definition: the study of foods, their nutrients, and other chemical components. So these could be things like antioxidants, their actions and interactions in our body, and how these impact our health status and our disease status. So some important definitions: nutrients are substances that we get from our food, and they're used by our body to promote growth, maintenance, and repair. An essential nutrient is a nutrient that must be obtained from the food we eat because our body can't make it for itself. And we know there are around 40 essential nutrients. And then nutrient density. This is a term we'll talk about, especially next week when we're talking about dietary or healthy dietary patterns. And these are the amount of beneficial nutrients, so like vitamins and minerals, in proportion to the calories we eat. So something that is nutrient dense will have a high amount of vitamins, minerals, or like bioactive compounds compared to calories. So there are 6 classes of nutrients. They include water, carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins, and minerals. And today we're going to talk about carbs, proteins, and fats because these are the 3 classes of nutrients that provide the calories in our diet. So like I said, these are called macronutrients, and they provide the calories that our body uses. And I just wanted to also mention that alcohol is not a nutrient, but it does contain calories. It's not considered a nutrient because it doesn't promote growth or repair of the body. So each of these macronutrients and alcohol has a fixed amount of calories per gram. That's how they calculate the information on our nutrition food labels. So a carbohydrate contains 4 calories per gram, protein contains 4 calories per gram, fat 9 calories, and alcohol 7 calories per gram. So one reason when you hear a lot about higher protein diets or increasing protein intake and you see a reduction in carbohydrate intake, because you can calorie per calorie swap out grams of these nutrients. So I'm sorry, this figure is a little bit blurry, but how much of these macronutrients should we consume every day? Well, this is based on your calorie needs, which I'll show you on the next slide, but this is called the acceptable daily macronutrient range. And these are the ranges of intake that have shown to be, to not put you at health risk. So you can see it's divided up into years. So for adults, we need around 45 to 65% carbohydrates, protein 10 to 35%, and fats 20 to 35%. So you can see there's a wide range of healthy intake. So these percentages are important, and the calorie numbers are important, the calories per gram, because then you can calculate how much you need to eat based on the recommended calorie intake for your sex and your age. And I won't go a lot into this, but Angela made a fast fact on at least how to calculate percentage of nutrients in grams or calories from specific food example, but we can also provide example on how to calculate what your proportion of dietary intake should be based on your caloric recommendations. So we know that nutrition also shares responsibility with other lifestyle factors for maintaining good health. And I took this information from a textbook I used to teach freshmen in nutrition. But by the age of 65, we'll have eaten over 100,000 pounds of food, which seems crazy. And the impact of food you have eaten together with your lifestyle choices, so are you sedentary or are you active? These accumulate over time to impact your health and life expectancy. And there's a lot of science that have shown people who eat a variety of plant foods, so like fruits, veggies, beans, nuts, whole grains, have a reduced risk of heart disease, stroke, diabetes, certain types of cancer, and other chronic diseases. So these are just recommendations of ways to improve your health with good nutrition practices. So keeping our saturated fat intake to less than 10% of our total calories, achieve and maintain a healthy weight, and balance your calorie intake with physical activity to help manage your weight. Increase fiber intake through fruits, veggies, and whole grain. Limit your intake of salt and foods high in potassium, and increase foods high in potassium. Avoid alcohol or drink in moderation, and aim for less than 10% of your total calories for sugar. And then on the right, and we'll post this on the website, you can see what these dietary recommendations help reduce the risk of. So I get a lot of questions that say, like, what are the perceived barriers to healthy eating? Or a lot of people think it's hard to eat healthy, which it can be. So a lot of things we hear are that healthy foods are not always available from fast food and takeout restaurants. And I know they're hard to find, but a lot of times you can modify the foods you order to be a little bit healthier, that it costs more to eat healthy foods, too busy to take the time to eat healthy. I heard this one from a friend actually the other day. I hear too much conflicting information about which foods are good for me and which foods aren't. So hopefully by the end of this course, you'll be able to make those decisions. Healthy foods don't taste good. And I think in DFEND 1.0, we provided a lot of recipes on ways to cook healthy foods that do taste good. And the people I usually eat with do not eat healthy foods. And I could say that, like, my husband falls into this category. So it's easy to go down with the people that are close to you. So one tip for how to shop healthy or choose healthy foods, many of you may have heard this, but people say shop the perimeter of the grocery store. So you can see, that's where you'll find a lot of your fresh fruit, fresh foods, your meat, your poultry, your dairy, eggs, but also don't overlook the frozen food aisle, because frozen fruits and veggies will last longer, and they're usually frozen right after picking, so they preserve all the vitamins and minerals. And then when you enter the center aisles, where a lot of the processed high sugar, high saturated fat foods are stocked, look for high protein or high fiber cereals, nut butters or nuts, canned beans or canned proteins, canned veggies, dried fruit, and try to avoid the junk food aisles. And then, where they can also get you is the cash registers. And I know our Walmart, since COVID-19, has removed all cashiers, and it's all self-checkout, and it is like stocked with junk food. So a lot of times, it's also people think it's also hard to eat better on a budget. So this comes from the USDA. And it shows tips for getting healthy food to stretch your food dollars. So really, like we talked about in DFEND 1.0, you really have to plan before you go to the store, plan your meals for the week, plan meals that you can use one component for another meal. So like cook once and eat all week. Check your newspaper online ads for coupons, compare and contrast. So look at the unit price. Buying in bulk, buying in season. Convenience costs, go back to the basics. So convenience foods will cost more than it will cost per unit to make yourself. So take the time. So eating healthy, no matter what your budget, does take a lot of planning and a lot of time. Certain foods are typically low cost all year round, like beans, carrots, greens, potatoes, apples. And be creative. Use your leftovers in creative ways. And restaurants can be expensive, but I think right now we're all sort of hopefully limiting our restaurant visits. And then for the last few minutes, I'd just like to revisit portion size, especially for those of you who are new to DFEND. So we know that the portion sizes of foods have been increasing since the early 1970s. And I know for those of you who were around when Supersize, that documentary was released, I know after that movie came out, McDonald's got rid of their Supersize options. But in the 1950s, a single serving of cola was 6 ounces, so that's around 3/4 of a cup, and today it's 20 ounces. A typical bagel today is 4 to 7 ounces, and they used to be 2 to 3 ounces. And I remember when this bagel restaurant near my house where I grew up changed their bagel size, my aunt, who was counting calories, went in and just started screaming at the personnel working there for changing her bagel size. And larger portion size means more calories. So when people are served more food, they tend to eat more, especially if we're in a group. And so this is just an example I found online, which showed what the portion size was around 20 years ago and what it is today. So cheeseburgers used to be around 330 calories. Now they're 590 calories. So a 130-pound person would have to work out for an hour and a half to burn this amount of calories. You can see pizza portions have increased, spaghetti portions have increased, but even now, where 20 years ago people would drink 8-ounce coffee with whole milk and a little bit of sugar for 45 calories. Now we like our lattes, our cappuccinos, our flavorings. So these drinks can be up to 350 calories or more. And all of these changes in portion size mean we have to exercise more, but we know that our jobs and our daily lives have actually become more sedentary. And so we posted a bunch of these under DFEND Point 1, but this is just a portion size guide. And you can use your hand for portion control. So pasta should be about a half a cup. So that's the front of your clenched fist, or a whole clenched fist is about 1 cup. 3 ounces of meat is about the size of your palm. And then the tip of your thumb is usually a tablespoon, and that would be true for peanut butter. And then a teaspoon is about the tip of your pointer finger. So if you need a cheat sheet that you can always carry around with you. And then one final thing we'll talk about is a guide to eating on the run. So this one I guess is outdated. Don't supersize. If they offer a grilled option, go for the grilled, not fried. That's 7 grams of fat versus 20 grams of fat. So I know a lot of places often advertise their salads, especially like Slim Chickens or Chick-fil-A with fried chicken, but you can always get a grilled option. Hold the mayo. Each spoonful of mayo is 100 calories. Avoid buffets and all-you-can-eat restaurants. Just say no to adding soda to your meal. That can be at least 200 calories or more. If you do eat out for fast food, balance it with healthier choices during the day. Split or share a meal. Bring your own lunch so you have control over what you're eating and you don't have to give in to your urges. Choose grab-and-go healthy foods. And if all else fails, go for the obvious lower calorie choices. So just to summarize, so we have time for questions. Today we talked about the 6 classes of nutrients. Angela's provided fact sheets on how to calculate the calories in the food we eat. Hopefully you'll understand a little bit more about calorie and macronutrient intake levels, strategies for healthy eating, and portion size. So we'll be happy to answer any questions. Let me stop sharing my screen and we can, we're happy to take any questions that you have. So we're gonna try to keep these presentations to 20 minutes, but if there's something you would like to know more about, just put it in the chat and we can develop some fast facts or make sure we incorporate it into a future lecture.
I did add a lot of links to the fast facts that were created from DFEND 1.0 to the chat, and a lot of them like overlap with the things that Dr. Baum just mentioned. And then this week's summary of basic nutrition fast fact is also added to the chat, but all of those can be found on our website, which I listed the link at the top.
So does anyone have any questions?
And the presentation will be put on our website under the Zoom slides section of it. And then the recordings, once we obtain them, will be added to our YouTube channel.
Yeah, so our IT helper is out of town right now, or not out of town, probably taking some time off. So last week I saved the video to the cloud. Today I'm trying to save it to the desktop to see if I can find it. But when he gets back, we'll get DFEND 1.0 videos posted. I think we started halfway through there, and we'll get today's videos.
The recipes are available from DFEND 1.0. They are written up on our website under the recipes tab. And then there are some that have like affiliated videos with them, and those videos can be found on our YouTube channel.
And the link to our YouTube channel is on the DFEND website. So next week, we'll be talking about healthy eating patterns. We hope by that time our assessment link is up and running so we can share that with everyone for doing a pre and post assessment of the course. We'll continue to put out some recipes. I think as we've been working out how DFEND 2.0 will work, we've been trying to figure out the best way. But I think we could focus on some portion recipes or good ways to like host people with portion sizes, especially during COVID-19. So pre-portioning out food is probably a safe food safety choice as well. But does anyone have questions about our sort of basics of nutrition?
We do have a fast fact from 1.0 also on our website on how to like host safely during COVID. If you are hosting, especially if you're doing things like family style, and just tips to make sure that there's as little cross-contamination among guests and food as possible. So there is a PDF on that.
Yeah, and we will share, I see there's some people who joined a little bit late. We will post everything on our website as well as this Scholar Works link, especially for people in the counties. The Scholar Works link might work a little bit better for people to access through the U of A website. Thanks, Pam. You always have the nicest things to say, so we appreciate that feedback. It keeps us going. Is there a fact sheet about figuring out the daily nutrients? We haven't made one yet, but we can do that. As I was putting the slides together, I thought that's probably one we need. And that will vary from person to person based on our gender and our physical activity levels and our age. So we can try to make a cheat sheet. And I think, did we provide links to that, Angela, on the previous?
For which one?
On how to figure out our daily nutrient needs?
We did not. The only ones we have is figuring out percentage intake and the total calories based on the macronutrient breakdown.
Okay, so we can work on, I think that's an important one, so we can work on that as well. How do companies? Angela, do you want to answer that one? Or do you want me to answer?
I think you might have more background from industry on that one.
Okay, so how do companies determine the nutrient content of food? So from what I remember from my time in industry and from what they do at the pilot plant in food science, they basically would put their recipe into the USDA has a software you can buy that actually makes the nutrition facts label. So I know we have one of the version of that software in our laboratory, and they have one in the pilot plant in food science if anyone's ever visited that. And you put your recipe of ingredients and quantities into this software and how many servings that will make, and it will generate a nutrition facts label for you. So I don't know if they can really calculate the difference from when something is picked and processed and ready for market as far as individual foods, I think there would be a little bit of micronutrient loss over time, but I think right now they have, the science to keep it as fresh as possible. It's more for packaged foods is what that nutrition label uses. And Angela, do you remember there is a margin of error?
Yeah, I was just thinking of that. I want to say I don't know if it's as little as 5 to 10 calories, but what she's referring to is like sometimes when you calculate out, and you'll see this on the fast fact that we wrote up for this week, if you were to calculate out the number of calories based on the grams of macronutrients that they're reporting, sometimes what you would calculate out may not directly match what is on the nutrition label. And that is because they may not be reporting some of those micronutrients that could be contributing to that total number. And there is, as she mentioned, a small like margin of error within like 5 to 10 calories, I want to say, but don't quote me on that they don't have to report to the exact number.
Yeah. But in general, if you're tracking the foods you eat and trying to maintain or do some sort of healthy eating pattern, it's good enough. And yeah, so do we have any other questions? We have a couple minutes left. I see also a graph for keeping up with daily nutrients. I think we might not be able to generate one, but we can certainly provide links to tools that can help you. And we can look at some things for like smartphone apps. And I remember last week we had someone asking, I think, about macros. And so macros are macronutrients. So those are your carbohydrates, proteins, and fat. And you see the term macros now all over social media, and it's just a way for talking about like the foods that give you calories in your diet. So do I have a phone app that we like? So I actually pay for one because I've been trying to at least not gain the COVID-19. So I use Noom, and it really focuses on like behavior and lifestyle. But I don't think their tracking feature is that great. Angela, did you have one?
I personally really like MyFitnessPal. It can be a little more tedious if you choose to put a whole recipe in, but I find it to be pretty accurate. And then they also have a barcode feature. So if you know that you're like trying to enter the slice of bread that you're eating, all you have to do is scan the barcode on the actual packaging, and it'll automatically read whatever that product is. And a tip for like a phone app is that I like to recommend, because sometimes people complain, oh, I started it and then it was just too much to keep up with. It took too much time. So a tip I like to give is just to kind of like check yourself a little bit by doing maybe 3 days a week. We'll do 3-day food records in research. And so you do 2 weekdays and 1 weekend day. The reason being that you tend to change your diet a little bit on the weekends. And so instead of expecting yourself to do 7 days a week, maybe just even doing 3 to try to capture like a screenshot of like what your average intake is on those various days.
Yeah. And so I think now more than ever, it's an important time to sort of start tracking and paying attention to our diet, knowing that, COVID-19 does seem to impact people that are obese or with chronic diseases. The severity of your COVID-19 illness seems to be partially dependent on obesity and disease state. There's another one. We can put a list together in a fast fact of different apps and what they do. But I mean, I think I would always find one that allows you to scan the barcode of the food you eat. And I think MyFitnessPal, like Angela said, is the most comprehensive database.
And they do have a free version and a premium version. I see someone else mention Carb Manager also offers that feature. I'm not familiar with Carb Manager, but they sound similar to MyFitnessPal in that they have the label feature, a free version, a premium version. And in MyFitnessPal, from experience, you can also set personal goals.
You can share with friends with MyFitnessPal, so you can have a team. So yeah, that's a good one. And I mean, one reason I do like MyFitnessPal is because it does have a massive database, so it makes tracking your food a little bit less tedious. Anyway, so we've reached our 12 o'clock time point. So to keep everyone on this 30-minute schedule, we'll go ahead and start to sign off. I want to thank everyone for your time. Next week, we'll be talking about healthy eating patterns, and we'll be in touch as soon as we have our assessment link ready. So thank you for your time, and we'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.